Welcome and great to have you join us as we go off script with Sam Monk, Senior Leader of Equippers Church. Enjoy today's podcast.
Well, welcome along to episode 16 of Off Script with Sam Monk. We're talking about what's worked, what hasn't, and leadership lessons. We're now into episode 16.
Wow.
And so the ball's rolling now. And really, Sam, this podcast thought it'd be good. Keen to ask you some questions just around leadership, the dynamic of leadership. Obviously, insecurity along the way kind of comes up, shows itself, especially in your younger years.
Yeah.
And the question I know a lot of us are asking, you can look at someone like yourselves who's seemingly quite a secure leader. Is insecurity something that I guess one day just goes away, or is it something that is kind of in your journey and you learn how to manage it, maintain it? What's kind of your overall thoughts around the whole concept of leadership and insecurity?
Oh, big subject, big subject. Because we all get insecure, and I'm sure most people have battled with insecurity at some point in their life. I know growing up in pastor's home, I was a shy, insecure pastor's kid, and even that whole shyness. In fact, I was so shy as a kid. I used to hide away from people, and in fact, my mum even put my pram away from crowds of people because I didn't like that. And even through my teenage years, was quite shy. And I really felt the Holy Spirit challenged me as a teenager. And he said, "Sam, you know your shyness?" I go, "Yep, I know it very well." He goes, "You know that shyness it's not one of the fruits of the Spirit."
Yeah, wow.
And I go, "Yeah, there's love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, self-control." And shyness wasn't there. And really what my shyness stemmed from was insecurity. Insecurity. And felt, again, the Holy Spirit say, you know your insecurity? Yeah, I know it too well. He goes, your insecurity is actually rooted in pride.
Wow.
And I'm going, hey, how's that? And just it came to me, when you're insecure, who are you thinking about? You're thinking about yourself.
Yeah, true.
And as long as your eyes are on yourself, you never can really focus on God. And, when it comes to pride, God resists the proud, but he gives grace to the humble. And so just from that moment, I felt, man, I needed to humble myself. And that helped me overcome the insecurity. It's funny how that works. It's almost like the more vulnerable you make yourself, the more secure you are.
Yeah, wow.
The more walls you build around yourself, the more insecure you are. And I guess to grow in leadership, you've got to open your heart to people. And when it comes to leadership, it's not maintaining an image of I've got this all together. Nobody's got it all together. We're all a work in progress. And in fact, if you're serving a leader who you think's got it all together, they're a liar. Which means, it means they're a work in progress. And we're all a work in progress. And I think, seeing that, identifying that is really important, because otherwise what you do is you go, well, it's all right for them.
Yeah.
But everybody has questions. Everybody at some point in their life would have doubted themselves. But it's really accessing God's grace in those moments. And I think there's a danger where we rely on ourselves. So I don't want to be secure in a way where my reliance, my dependence is on myself. It's almost like you've got to be in this place. Security in God is being dependent on Him.
Yeah, good. And I mean, we could even unpack just that part you're saying around that ability to not need to know all the answers all the time. And I mean, obviously we've been leading through a COVID, the world's been leading through a COVID scenario, and there's a lot of uncertainties that we've already kind of talked through in the previous podcast. But your ability along the way at times to just say, I don't know how it's going to pan out, but and somehow that, in a weird way, gives a sense of security to the team. It's like, okay, we're in this together. And you just want to unpack just your, I guess how leaders develop that ability to be secure enough to go, I don't know all the answers, and not that need to be everybody's answer to every situation.
Yeah, well, you can fake it. But in the end, I found if you fake it over time, it comes and bites you in the bum.
Yeah.
And what people respond to is authenticity.
Yeah.
And I think if you can be authentic in your leadership and recognize that what you're building is not about you.
Yeah.
One thing I said early on is like, and I know God's put me in this place. If you put yourself in a position, you have to keep yourself in that position. But if it's a God thing, if God's put you there, He sustains you. That's why I'm against self-promotion.
Yeah.
In fact, any position I'm in, I want to know that God's put me there, because if I self-promote, I'll put myself in a position where I have to keep myself in that position, where if God's put me there, He'll keep me there. And just the whole thing, the security going, this isn't about me.
Yeah.
This is about His church, and I love the church. I'm passionate about the church. But I haven't died for the church. Well, not yet.
See how things go.
See how things go. But, He's more passionate about this than I am.
Yeah.
And soon as I, bring it back on me, then I have to perform.
Yeah.
Rather than going, hey, I need to take the pressure off myself and put a demand on God.
Yeah. And there's a degree of security in being able to do that in yourself, but also in God. It's like, no, I can rely on God.
Yeah, well, and if you built a church, a ministry off a good business plan,
yeah,
it would breed a little bit of insecurity, because you've got to come up with another plan.
Yeah.
Whereas, we have our plans, we make our plans and we commit them to God. But in the end, He's the one who ordains. He brings it to pass. In the end, and we can't, in the end, it's just we're privileged to be partnering with Him. Yeah.
And I mean, when it comes to insecurity, there's a whole bunch of things that kind of add to it or help fuel it. But we know comparison is obviously a huge part that fuels that sense of insecurity. Do you just want to unpack just the journey of comparison, the dangers of comparison in leadership or just in life? And how that plays into your insecurities.
Well, Paul said, those who compare themselves amongst themselves aren't wise, or commend themselves amongst themselves, aren't wise. And, when we compare, there's some comparisons, by the way, that they actually inspire you.
Yeah.
I look at some leaders who are doing some phenomenal things. And one thing is, there's always somebody who's doing more than you. I like the thought, there's always someone who's doing more than you with less.
Yeah. That's a challenging thought.
That's a challenging thought, and it's a great thought just to put things in perspective, because you never want to. Sometimes our insecurity wants to puff ourselves up.
Yeah,
insecurity comes through boasting. When you're secure, the things that you're doing, they say enough in themselves.
Yeah.
You don't need to tell anybody how good you are.
Yeah.
and so, just that whole side of, and I've lost my train of thought. Help me out here.
Well, just that ability comparison in leadership and how that fuels.
And just, that comparison inspires you.
Yeah.
So there's comparison that inspires you, but there's comparison that where you compare yourself with somebody who's gifted differently.
Yeah. Wow.
Like if I was to compare my singing to somebody who can sing, I'm going to feel condemned.
Yeah.
And I'm going to feel down on myself. I'm going to feel not good enough. And so that comparison is not a great comparison to make. And a lot of people, don't understand who they are. If you understand who you are, the more secure you understand who you are, and you understand who you're not.
Yeah.
You understand what God's gifted you in, and you understand where He hasn't gifted you. But as a young person, I had to try singing to know I wasn't good at singing. I remember standing in a line at school, and the teacher, we had to sing the song, and the teacher went by and put his ear to our voice, and then he called one line to stand to come to the front and one to stay back. And I never got called to the front. Right then I understood that wasn't my grace. That's not my gift. Many are gifted in that, but the danger is we compare, apples with oranges.
Yeah, well.
And we make unhealthy comparisons. And then there's other comparisons that we can make where people go, well, I'm doing okay. I'm not as bad as they are.
Yeah.
And that comparison can also limit you.
Yeah.
Just because you're not doing bad doesn't mean does it mean you're doing good?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's that whole thing, that whole thought of compare yourself against the potential God's put inside of you, not the potential God's put inside somebody else. But that, I like that thought of, when there is a security in you, you can be inspired by other people and not feel insecure around them, but feel inspired by them.
And provoked,
Yeah. So there is that sense. But I guess, in your journey, when it comes to insecurity, it's manifests itself in different ways, in different environments. So you just want to unpack just some of those different ways, I guess, insecurity can kind of show up, or the way it can kind of hinder us or hold us back.
Yeah, well, pride is a big one.
Yeah.
I think, sometimes living in the confines of what we know, because we don't want to venture out beyond that because that makes us feel insecure.
Yeah.
It's hard to serve a big God and have a small dream.
Yeah.
And I think humility is agreeing with God. I like that. And if God's called you to do something significant, called you to change the world, humility is agreeing with that plan.
Yeah.
Otherwise, a lot of people live within what they feel safe. But I reckon vulnerability and humility go together. And really, we never move forward unless we put ourselves in a place. Like vulnerability and opportunity go hand in hand.
Yeah, well.
And, that's on all levels, personally, but it's also in endeavors, initiatives. And so, I think safety, wanting to control, is often the need to know, the need to define things, the need for position and title. That's a big thing today, is a lot of people can put their security in their position and their title, or they can even put their security in past achievements. That's insecurity. Look what I've done back there. It's good what you've done back there, but like Paul, we've got to press on. And we've got to keep on pushing, and we can't even look at what we've done in the past. It's about what's happening now.
Yeah, and I guess that big part of that overcoming the insecurity is knowing what to put your security in.
Yeah.
Is what helps develop that. And then just the last few minutes, we get to talk about the difference between, I guess, nerves and insecurity, because I remember early on, even, you do new things for the first time, preach, whatever it is, and there's this nerve. I remember thinking, man, I can't wait till I'm not nervous anymore about it. But you soon learn that nerves kind of go with you. And you just want to unpack the journey around, what's nerves and what's insecurity, and how you, I guess, navigate those two things.
Yeah, well, I think, nerves, I think it's healthy to always have a level of nerve where you're nervous, because that means you perform at a greater level. The moment you get familiar is often the place of your downfall. Where you go, man, I got this. It's important to be confident, but it's confident not just in our own abilities. He's made this whole thing so that we are dependent on him.
Yeah, great.
I like John 15, where it says we can do nothing apart from him. Sometimes we think we can do a whole lot apart from him. But we can do nothing apart from him. And so, nerves are important, but I think the more you go on, you are able to control those nerves. Once the nerves would get the better of you, and you'd have a mind blank like I had before. And, it's just, you can't control the nerves, but the longer you go on, it's like, as it says with butterflies, those butterflies now fly in formation. And so you can be in a pressured environment and still think with a clarity. And still be able to, execute. Whereas once those nerves would be overwhelming, that it would cause you to freeze and and everything go out of your mind in a moment. And I think, nerves are a good thing.
Yeah.
And I pray, I always have that element where, I'm a little bit nervous.
Yeah.
But insecurity is when you're focused on self.
Yeah.
And how you look. And great words from Brian Houston. I think he was talking to Joyce Meyer, and he asked Joyce Meyer, do you ever get nervous when you speak? And she says, no, not really, because I'm just focused on the people I'm helping.
Yeah, great.
I'm not even thinking about myself. And as long as you're focused on who you're serving, who you're helping, and it's not about you, you got things in the right perspective.
Yeah, and I guess you've kind of taught us that and speaking to us a bit about that the selfie culture.
Yeah.
And how people are always looking at themselves in photos. Do you just want to unpack that?
Yeah. Well, too much of a focus is on how you look in a photo rather than how everybody else looks.
Yeah.
And so often we discard photos because we don't look good in the photo, but it can't be about us.
Yeah.
It's no longer I that lives, but it's Christ who lives in me. And, in the end, if we're just a bridge that people can walk over to find Jesus, we've served our purpose.
Yeah.
And I think, that's got to be the focus in the heart level. And then, it's all up from there.
Well, I hope this conversation's been helpful for you. If it has, why don't you like it? Share it with some people in your world. But you can join us back here for another episode of Off Script with Sam Monk.
Thanks for listening to Off Script with Sam Monk. If you found this podcast helpful, make sure you pass it on. We love your feedback, so drop us a line about what topics you'd like to hear about on Off Script with Sam Monk.